Prosthesis is an artificial extension that replaces a missing body part, such as an upper or lower body extremity. It is part of the field of biomechatronics, the science of fusing mechanical devices with human muscle, skeleton, and nervous systems to assist or enhance motor control lost by trauma, disease, or defect. There are 4 main types of artificial limbs, including the transfemoral, transfemoral, and transradical, and lastly, transhumeral prostheses. The type of prostheses received will depend on what part of the limb is missing. Alone in the United States, there are an estimated 1.9 million amputees and approximately 185,000 amputation surgeries performed each year. A prosthetic limb in the context of perception is an artificial limb that is designed to not only replace a missing body part, but also to allow sensory feedback. By doing so, it allows the user to perceive the prosthetic limb as an extension of their own body rather than seeing it as a restraint. When someone loses a hand or leg, they don't just lose the ability to grab objects or walk, they also lose the ability to touch and sense their surroundings. While prosthetics are able to restore some of the motor control aspects, they are normally not able to restore sensation. Sensation learning involves changes in the perception and interperception of sensory feedback and may further influence functional and psychosocial outcomes.
The first attempts at arm prosthetics were in medieval times. These ones were made of wood and metal. These prosthetics were used to get soldiers back into battle as quickly as possible. They were fitted with combat in mind. The hands were made to hold a shield or a weapon. But oftentimes, prosthetics were not common in this time period, as amputees during this time period often died from complications, such as infection. These prosthetics were also quite expensive to make, so most of the population weren't able to receive them. This is a problem we continue to see throughout the history of prosthetics. The first recorded man in history to use an arm prosthesis was Marcus Sergius, who was a Roman general during 218 to 201 BC. Early versions of his arm prosthesis were made of metal and scraps. This prosthetic allowed him to hold his shield and continue leading the Roman army into battle. In the 1950s, Norbert Reiner, the father of cybernetics, had proposed the idea that biologic signals in our body could be used to control a prosthesis, but this research didn't flourish in the United States. The first myoelectric prosthesis was actually designed by a Russian scientist, Alexander Kubrinsky. Even though this prosthesis was aesthetically pleasing and did work, it had a very limited range of motion, requiring a very heavy battery pack, and was unfortunately very noisy. During the 60s, Melvin Glimker was working one day a week at the Liberty Mutual Rehabilitation Center. He noticed that many amputees were not using their prosthesis because the devices they had such limited capabilities. Thomas DeLorme, the center's medical doctor, also took notice of this occurring. This led to them meeting with the company, Liberty Mutual Insurance Co., who agreed to fund a research team to develop the myoelectric prosthetic arm. Norbert Reiner joined this team and suggested that Arnold Bose and Robert Mann, both professors at MIT, also joined this research. These two also recruited 2 grad students, Bob Walter and Ronald Rothschild. Thus, the creation of the research team was complete, and the myoelectric prosthesis could be created. This research team managed to create the Boston arm, but the first 18 versions of it were a failure. Every single one was fitted to an amputee, and every single user rejected it. Similar to the first myoelectric prosthesis designed by the Russian scientists, the battery was too heavy. The arm was reworked and eventually began to be functional and worked for amputees.
Arm prosthetics come in many different shapes, sizes, and capabilities. Basic ones act simply as cosmetic pieces with very limited ability to assist with tasks. These ones are only capable of holding down papers when writing or stabilizing items in the intact hand. More advanced prosthetics are capable of movement, such as a body-powered arm prosthesis and a myoelectric arm prosthesis. We'll be focusing on the myoelectric arm prosthesis and how it works. Myoelectric, if we break down the word, myo means muscles, and electric is referring to being powered by electricity. The user of the prosthetic uses their muscles to trigger the device. This device uses less energy from the body, making it easier to use than the body-powered arm prosthesis. By flexing their muscles, it stimulates the microprocess electrical activity in the muscles and alerts the device to make the movement. Typically, when one has not lost a limb, their central nervous system connects to the muscles, which then triggers the joint, and then the output is movement of the limb, wrist, and even the fingers. But when amputation occurs, part of that system is lost, and myoelectric arm prosthetics fills in the gaps. Once the central nervous system triggers the muscles, it then allows for control of the device, which triggers the battery, then causes the movement. We can see the feedback loop in this graph. In this video from Vulcan Augmetics, the person in the video shows how to use the myoelectric arm. As we saw in the video, whenever he flexed the muscles in his arm, it would cause the myoelectric arm prosthesis to move. This type of prosthesis allows the user to have more function, as it does have a fully functioning hand on the end with a palm and 5 fingers. This device does require time to calibrate, and it takes time to learn how to use the device. But people who have taken the time to learn how to use it have been able to drive, play the piano, and do other tasks that they were unable to do prior to having the prosthetic.
Myoelectric prosthetics have helped further our understanding of 2 human senses. The first is how our eyes work with our limbs in order to accomplish tasks. When we reach for items, we unconsciously adjust how open our hand is, based on how large the object is. For example, you space your fingers closer together to pick up a pen than to pick up an apple. You're not typically aware of it, but your eyes are helping to guide your hands. With information from your eyes, your brain dictates how your fingers should move. Even when a limb is amputated, those signals are still sent down the arm. The myoelectric limb picks up on the signals sent to the residual limb and adjusts the fingers accordingly, just like a natural arm. Another thing we have learned from the use of myoelectric limbs is how our bodies interpret temperature. Amputees can often feel phantom temperature sensations in the limb they lost. Researchers have discovered that if they stimulate a patch of skin with nerve endings connected to where someone lost their limb, with hot or cold sensations, they can be felt in the missing limb. A new add-on for prosthetic limbs, the Mini Touch, can sense temperature and send those signals to the person wearing the prosthetic. The Mini Touch improved one user's temperature sensing accuracy from 33% to 100%.
Understanding how our sensory systems work, like how we feel touch, pressure, and temperature, has really changed the way people can benefit when it comes to the use of prosthetic arms. Usually, prosthetic limbs were only used to help with movement, but now, thanks to a better understanding of the brain and sensory systems, prosthetists are able to create prosthetic arms that don't just let people move, but also feel. For example, by using sensory feedback technology, prosthetic arms can send signals back to the brain, letting the user feel things like texture or pressure, just as they would with a real hand. This is related to our somatosensory system. This system is responsible for our sense of touch, pressure, and pain according to the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. This is a big deal because it makes the prostheses feel more natural, helping the user grip objects more securely or even feel whether something is hot or cold. This kind of technology comes from neuroscience. The Department of Neuroscience defines the neuroscience as a study of how the nervous system develops, its structure, and what it does. This idea helps us understand how the brain processes touch. For instance, there are now prosthetics that use electrodes and neural interfaces to send signals to the brain, giving the user sensory information about their environment. This is a breakthrough, especially for people who've experienced limb loss, because it allows them to feel multiple sensations through their prostheses. Researchers are also now using this knowledge to predict and prevent issues like phantom limb pain, which is pain you feel in your missing body part after an amputation. It might seem like an illusion to feel pain in an area of your body that no longer exists, but the pain is real, according to the Cleveland Clinic. If creators are incorporating sensory feedback, we can reduce the chances of these discomforts. By learning about our sensory system and how they connect to our brain, scientists and engineers are able to create prosthetics that offer more than just function, but they also offer a better quality of life. With continued research and advancements, prosthetics could one day feel as natural and responsive as the original limb, improving not only the function, but also the emotional and psychological well-being of those who use them.